The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform and any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Welcome to the Influencer's Edge. This is the place where you come to get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques to leapfrog over the pack in sales, persuasion, and influence. Be sure you visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now sit back, tune in, and enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Influencer's Edge. You know, I love doing this show. I was talking to today's guest before we went on air about how it's one of the highlights of my workday and sometimes my week because it fulfills my values of contribution, connection, and I forget my other value, contribution, connection, and creativity, or whatever they are. But today's guest is Dr. Robinson-Winemiller. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I get the added bonus of you're a cat daddy. So that makes me really happy.
I'm a cat daddy. I'm a crazy cat daddy. There you go. Anyone who doesn't like it, as I always like to say, it's my show. Get lost if you don't like it. So the first thing I got to ask is my Jewish mother, may she rest in peace and may her memory be for a blessing. She'd say, doctor of what? Doctor, a dentist. So what kind of doctor? She didn't have that kind of accent. What kind of doctor are you?
Well, I actually have a completed one. It's a doctorate in musical arts and education. And the one I'm working on.
Pause. You're a musician.
I am. I was. Yeah, for a long time.
Magic. So I love to interrupt my guests in a useful way. What instruments did you play?
I was a French horn professor. That was my main instrument.
Wow. So you can blow a lot of wind when you want to.
Absolutely. I can be very windy if I want to be.
Okay. Fantastic. I love your laugh. So Dr. Melissa, let's see. Let me see if I can get, I put these on my phone and turn my phone to airplane mode. So after you're losing your career as a professor to a brutally unempathic leadership, I won't even need to unpack those details. I think I know what that is. Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller reinvented herself as an expert in empathy and EQ. Let's talk about that reinvention process because, see, this is a personal part of the story. So was this a sudden insight, or were you thinking about it like, I can't take this anymore? Or did you one day go, fuck no, I'm not doing this. I got to find something else to do?
Well, it was more of a long-term unraveling. So what had happened is within my first term of being a professor, I was assaulted by one of my colleagues.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But unfortunately, the problem is that then I started trying to climb through the system and figure out what to do about this. And what really struck me, I mean, aside from the initial incident, was that no matter who I talked to within the system or who I tried to work with or who I tried to get through to, nobody wanted to hear it. Nobody wanted to listen. And there just was this lack of any kind of like connection. And it's because the system was just broken. But finally, in 7 years, I did everything I could. And I finally had to just walk away from a career that I'd been in for over 40 years. It's what I'd always wanted to do. It was.
How terrifying was that for you?
Horrifically.
Tell me a little bit more about that and how you coped with it.
Not well, especially at first. I mean, I left the area, I walked away, but the thing is when you do something like that for so long, it becomes who you are. And figuring out who I was without the music was really painful. It took about 7 years.
It's a
So
big part of the grieving process to say, wait a minute, not only have I lost what I love, but who am I now that I'm not doing it?
yeah.
Wow. Did you have empathy for yourself during that process? And did it teach you more about what it is to be an empathic person?
It taught me a lot more because I didn't, again, especially at first. I mean, I ran in circles for quite a while trying to figure out what happened next. And because I was in this, place, I had to keep thinking back, well, what happened? Well, what went wrong? Well, what was the mess? Well, what was what happened? And at the same time, I'm still trying to live life. I had a couple jobs. My husband and I did some consulting, and I finally just decided that I had to do something. So I went back and I got my MBA, and I was still like trying to think, now what? I mean, even though I already had a master's and a doctorate, it was
Jeez.
like, well, now what do I do? Well, you go back to what you know. So I did the MBA, I did a master's in data statistics, and I started on a doctorate in interdisciplinary leadership. And this is where it started to come together, because I kept asking the question of what went wrong and why. And so it all kind of just congealed and came to a point. And that's kind of where I've been ever since. Because if I can keep one person from going through what I went through, then I'm a huge success, honestly.
I I totally get it. So let me finish. You have 30 plus years of leadership. Let's talk about it again. I pause in the Bible. 30 years is a long time to be doing something. I have another career that I've done for 30 years. I finally created an AI to do it for me because I got tired of it. What has kept you passionate about doing this for 30 years? Everyone wants to go into why do you do it and blah, 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 which is, we already covered that. But 30 plus years is a long time. What has kept you passionate about doing this?
Seeing the impact that it has. When you have good leaders, the impact that it has and the ripple effect, because it doesn't just go down, it goes out, it goes up, it goes everywhere. And not just as far as profit and productivity, but as far as the impact you have on people's lives. When people think back, they can probably tick off, well, this one was bad and that one was bad and this one really sucked and I really hated this one. But there was this one leader. Oh yeah, Mrs. Ross. She was amazing. She really understood who I was, and she's the one who motivated me to be better and do better. And that's always the kind of leader I wanted to be. I wanted to be that one that made that kind of a difference.
That's fantastic. I knew from the minute we started talking that you were service-minded and impact-driven, which is a very powerful thing. Let's talk about empathy and the distinction between exercising empathy and being an empath. I hear a lot of people say I'm an empath, and they turn out to be incredibly narcissistic. I'm not saying that's always not, but everyone, it's very fashionable. I am spiritual and I am an empath and I do tarot cards, et cetera, et cetera. So is being an empath, whatever that means, the same as exercising empathy? And what do we mean by those terms? I don't even think you use the term I am an. Do you think of yourself as an empath, whatever that means?
In the way that the term is meant to be used in hardcore research and like the stuff that I'm doing with reading and researching, I think to a certain degree we all are. In that to be an empath just means that you do exercise empathy. Now, if you're talking an empath when kind of like you said, a little more metaphysical, I feel the earth kind of thing, then no.
What about the neuro? Well, I want to get further into empathy and building it and doing some pushback here. But have you looked at all of the neuroscience of empathy?
A lot of it, yeah.
Talk about that. What's some of the neuroscience of empathy? How does that work? I'm thinking what pops to my mind, doctor, is I called you doctor. What pops to my mind, Melissa, are mirror neurons, and we're wired for it, or we wouldn't survive as a species.
Yeah. And that's absolutely a real thing. I mean, when you start talking about empathy, they actually do the tests on it, and they study very young children because there's this question of, is it biological? Is it environmental? To what degree do we just have it, or do we have to learn it? And they actually follow these newborns, right? So they're, days old. And when one cries, the rest will cry as well. It's called emotional contagion. And they think of this as
I
kind
love
of a proto empathy, where you feel, because if you want to really get down to brass tacks, like the easiest definition is just empathy means I can feel what someone else is feeling because I've been there, because I can relate to them. It's not a woo kind of thing. It's a social thing. It's a pro-social behavior, because if I can understand you're angry, I already know I need to step back. If I can feel that you're sad and we can work together, we can both come through this. So there are biological roots in this. And the flip side of this, like you said, narcissist. So if you think about it on a spectrum, right? Because most personality things happen on a spectrum of some kind. At this end of the spectrum where there is no empathy are your narcissists, your psychopaths, sociopaths,
Your
Machiavelli.
CEOs, your big power CEOs, true or false?
Some of them, yeah. Some of them, yeah. But these people have no empathy. Like when they do the MRI, the parts of the brain that should light up when you're feeling human connection don't light up. They're not there. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, so this is called the dark triad down here with the psychopaths and the Dahmers and the horrible narcissists.
The Dexters.
Yeah, exactly. And they
I
call it the dark triad. There is actually a light triad because we are on a spectrum, which means for every psychopath, there is going to be someone that shows undue amounts of empathy.
You have never looked at my dating life, Dr. Winemiller, because I have. Keep going. Yeah.
Well, just people don't realize this because we focus so much on the ones that do the damage.
Yeah.
Because once we've been hurt, we need to protect ourselves and we want to keep that damage from happening again. But there is the other side. And that's where I think we need to put our vision, put our emphasis.
Let's talk about that light triad. What would the light triad be?
I'll be honest, because I'm very
Please.
much in the middle of the spectrum. I forget what the other two are,
That's
but
fine.
but the empathy side of things, people that really show empathy, high amounts of empathy, they usually end up being like the Dalai Lamas or the Gandhis or the people that have so much empathy that it doesn't relate on a person-to-person level, but rather in very large groups. And they see a need for social change. They're the ones that are going to lie on that end of the spectrum.
How much of empathy is, I want to get to emotional intelligence too, because I myself have been challenged on this one. I don't want to get into me. This is about you. It is about you. Empathy. Does empathy mean you go fully into what the other person is feeling, or you just, if I could give you a metaphor, we have a pool of water.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would say empathy is diving in head first and swimming in that water. Other people would say, no, it's dipping your toe in just enough to take the temperature of the water and feel whether it's smooth or whether it's stormy. So to use a metaphor, is empathy diving into the other person's emotions? Because I would think if you do that, then you lose emotional leadership because you're feeling what they're feeling. If you're angry and their anger totally takes you over, then they're the emotional leader of the frame of the interaction.
There's actually two different questions there. So the first, do you have to experience it fully or can you just kind of touch it? Empathy, just because it's feeling what the other person is feeling, you're not taking responsibility, you're not trying to fix what's going on, and you're not setting boundaries. So it really depends on the situation. If it's that kind of emotional situation where you're going to get sucked in, then yeah, if you're in a leadership position, you have a responsibility to a lot of people. You can't get completely sucked into this, which is where the second question comes in, because according to the research, originally there was like 42 different kinds of empathy, which they narrowed down to 8. And the two that I focus on are emotional or affective empathy, which is what you're talking about, and cognitive empathy, which means that we logically understand what's happening. And
Now,
I
how much
happen
of
to
pause. I
yeah,
want you to put a pin. I want to hear you because
okay,
this is like having a conversation over coffee with me, and I'm very inquisitive.
that's fine.
Okay. Cognitive empathy. How much does that involve being able to read nonverbal because I have a dear friend who teaches interrogation and deception detection, and he really can read people. He can see right through people. It's scary. He uses his powers for good, and he's taught me some stuff. How much of cognitive empathy is having skill, is a skill at being able to read things like nonverbal cues and gestures and that sort of thing?
Huge. That's a huge part of it, which is why the people that have no empathy, like your card carrying psychopaths, can learn cognitive empathy, which fool the rest of us.
You got to unpack that. Wow.
So a lot of times people that are in the dark triad are actually very intelligent, not always, but a lot of times. And if they're smart about it, they understand that they're missing something about the human experience. There's a lot that goes into that dark triad stuff. But part of that is in being able to pass as a normal human being with empathy. So if they can cognitively pick up on these things, including nonverbal cues, and learn what the right reaction should be, that's how they get by. That's how you get psychopaths in prison who are able to take tests and convince people that they're okay to get out when they haven't actually been reformed or rehabilitated at all. That's how you get people that move up high in some of these corporations that have convinced people that they've learned leadership skills and emotional intelligence when they haven't at all. They've learned enough cognitive empathy to be able to do what they want to do.
Seems to me it's a natural and logical conclusion that emotional empathy is something that you're born with, but cognitive empathy is a developmental skill, or is that not accurate? Can you be born with, do you have to train for cognitive empathy, or is that something, again, that's hardwired?
That's a good question.
I
think
told you
that
I asked the good ones.
you did, and you do not disappoint. This is fantastic. I think so. This would be my opinion. I would think that it would have more to do with environment, but that you would also learn through doing, so if you're emotionally, you have empathy and you're doing the emotional things, your brain would switch on and say, this is what's happening here. I've gotten drawn into this too much. Next time I need to back out a little bit. I need to keep a cool head and a warm heart is how I put it.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, write that down. A cool head with a warm heart. I love that.
Yeah.
Or I would say a sharp mind and a soft heart, but any way you want to put it,
Absolutely.
any way you put it, I like that. That's totally cool. I'm going to give you a big pushback
All
because in
right.
my careers, I teach social skills to guys who are totally clueless, 30, 40 years old, who've never had a date in their life. And people have said to me, you cannot teach social skills. It's impossible. I've said, here's the proof. And yes, you can. Can you teach empathy?
Statistically, 95 to 98% of the population has empathy. So it's not a matter of teaching it, it's a matter of practicing it.
How would you, so what are a couple of best practices for leaders? Let's focus it back on leaders. So how can leaders, business, and we have people who are in sales teams, run their own businesses, et cetera, et cetera. What are some of the building blocks of doing that?
The very first thing that I teach is self-reflection, honestly, because I'll go in to work with these leaders and they are very driven. They're very ambitious. They're very, you think of Maslow's pyramid of needs, they're up at the top. They're highly self-actualized. And because of that, they tend to put themselves on the back burner, which is why they have families that are falling apart. They have substance abuse issues. They maybe just don't even take care of themselves. They don't physically and mentally do what they need to do. And it's because they're not focused on who they are and what they are. They're not showing empathy to themselves.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
I usually get a certain amount of pushback on that because it's like, well, empathy means I can feel what other people are feeling. Well, I know what I'm feeling. Okay. Do you? Are you certain of that? Are you actually taking time to self-reflect and to face maybe the ugly things that you don't want to face? Because if you can't feel empathy for yourself, how are you going to feel it for anybody else?
I don't know. Is that part of, see, I meditate and that's how I get that's my contemplative practice. It's enabled me to see my own shit as it comes up. And I hope it's shown me a lot of my delusions and delusions of grandeur and other delusions. you recommend some kind, what are your practices that you recommend for leaders to develop this? So you go into a corporation, I'm assuming, or into some business where there's high-powered leader or a leadership team. Do you teach them practices? What are the practices you teach them to do this?
I
Because
start with what I call my,
do it, because it's one thing, here's what you need to do, but then there's
yeah.
the other to give them the processes.
Yes. So because leaders are usually very busy, I start with what I call micro meditations. And what I do is I say, okay, what I need you to do is just reflect on this for a second throughout the day. You went through the meeting, you saw the reactions of the people. You didn't blow up today, so that's good. But what could we have done better so that this could have been more effective? As you went through the hall, you put your head down and you didn't notice anybody. So did you take that time to make those human connections, or did you just plow through the day? You had a really rough day with your wife yesterday, and now you've come into work and you're bringing that with you. How are you taking this out on other people? And I'm talking like a minute here and a minute there, but doing it consistently throughout the day so that you start to get into a practice, because this is a practice, not a destination, right? The other thing that I recommend is journaling of some kind. And I don't care if it's 10 seconds speaking to your phone. I don't care if it's writing on the computer. I don't care if you want to get a leather bound journal, write it down and then go back and reread it. Because the third step, if they're really serious about that, is you need to find a way to honestly assess everything that's been going on. And if you can do that for yourself through your journaling and the micro meditations, fantastic. But if you're not sure you can be honest with yourself, get an accountability buddy. Get someone who's going to tell you truth. It shouldn't be your assistant. It shouldn't be someone whose job is on the line. And
No, definitely not.
yeah, shouldn't be a family member. It should be
No.
someone who's going to tell you the truth. So whoever that is for you, whether that's a coach or a therapist or just your basketball buddy who will look you in the eye and tell you the truth, whatever. But there needs to be candid and open communication about it, because you're going to be facing some hard truths, because we all do.
Wow. A lot in there. We could do a whole show on that. So let's talk about EQ. I want a
Yeah.
definition. First, I wanted you to define it as you define it. And then second, I'm going to push back. I believe that it can be taught and developed. A lot of people watching this will say, bullshit, it cannot be taught. There's some people who have it, some people who don't. I know it can be taught because I've done it. My niece, Vanessa Van Edwards, I'm so proud of you, Vanessa. You may have not heard of her.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, that's my beautiful niece, Vanessa.
Well, there you go. I knew I liked you.
Well, genius runs in the family. You actually, which book is that? Cues?
That's Captivate. I have cues on my phone, though. I'm listening to it right now.
Well, there you go. That's my beautiful, beloved, amazing niece, Vanessa.
Well, she's fantastic, and her TED Talk is amazing. So she's awesome.
I can get her on the phone like that, but she's a busy woman. But this show is about you. So tell us, can you teach emotional intelligence and can you teach it? What's your methodology for teaching it?
So let's start with a quick definition, just so we're all on the same page, because it's one of these fuzzy things that people wrap a lot of stuff in. So if we're looking at the research, the basic definition is emotional intelligence means I can control and understand my emotions, and I can understand the emotions of others. Now, the way I think of this is like a big tool bag, and it's filled with communication skills, teamwork, motivation, self-discipline. It's got hammers and wrenches and chisels and saws and whatever else you want in there. This is where empathy comes in, because in the past, they've put empathy into this tool bag. I think it comes first. You have to use your empathy to approach emotional intelligence, so you know when you reach into that bag to pull out a hammer and not a chisel.
Yes.
And in this way, I do believe it's a teachable skill.
Yeah. Okay. I'll buy that. Let's go back into what's in that bag. So tell us again what's in that bag.
Communication's a big one. That's a massive one. Communication skills, self-discipline, being able to, say, no, I'm not going to go to the mall today or whatever. I guess I'm an old person if I'm talking about malls, right? But, I'm not going to go do that today. I'm actually going to do my work. Motivation.
Hold on. You can't crack me up. We don't,
Yeah.
I don't think of old, I think seasoned and wise. But seasoned and wise comes along with creaky joints and not being able to be as flexible as you used to be. But we'll go
Yeah.
with that, Dr. Winemiller. Go ahead. I stepped on you. I'm sorry.
That's
Communicate.
okay. My sister says age just brings more to shave, so you can however
Yuck.
you like.
Yuck. Break time for that. No, 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 that's fine. Just
But
yourself a hoot. Keep going.
yeah, but so there's self-motivation and the ability to motivate others.
Mhm.
All of these things that make great leaders. It's the same argument of can you teach leadership? Yeah, I believe you can.
Yeah.
It doesn't, because it goes back to what they called the great man theory. Well,
Oh,
they're just born and not made. Absolutely not.
I think
No.
some people are born or just have a natural charisma about them. They
Sure.
certainly can polish it. Like, I don't think everyone could be a Barack. Let's not talk about. I don't care about their politics. Leave their politics aside, but everyone would agree, at least in public, Barack Obama, when he addressed a group or a crowd, very charismatic man. He could move people. He knew
Yes.
oratory quite well. Same with John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King. You may not have agreed. Who knows what they really were like as people, but they sure knew how to have that power.
Yeah.
And
Well, one of the things people that have worked with Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan, no politics involved, just as people, said that they had the ability when they were speaking to you to make you feel like you were the only person
yep,
in the room. And
yep,
that's an emotional intelligence skill.
yep, that has worked well. That has carried me far in many different areas, some of which are profane. So I'm not going to discuss them with a lady like you and a doctor nonetheless. I should have respect, extra respect. Problem cases. Tell us about one of your, don't identify them. Obviously, it's confidential, but
Yeah.
who you can't identify them, but is there a profession per se that you find is most difficult to work with, where the EQ is just where the people tend to be almost on the spectrum? They're so, I've worked in the whole dating seduction thing. A huge 70% of them are engineers of some kind, software engineers, electrical engineers. Something about engineers and emotional intelligence just is like oil and water. So tell us if there's a category or of industry or something like that that's been particularly difficult for you.
Healthcare,
Healthcare, doctors?
especially doctors.
Oh, yes. Tell us more.
Yep.
Unpack that.
Yep. So there's a couple different reasons. The first is that they're put in a position where they're having to show empathy every single day, whether they're doctors or nurses or medical staff, because of the patients. However, because of this, these professions suffer from empathy fatigue, and they have a really hard time knowing when and where to put up those boundaries. The other reason is that just because these doctors are trying to show empathy, at least some of them, the leadership doesn't. There's this huge disconnect between the business and the patients. And the
Yeah.
third is because being a physician is such a high level, important job. And unfortunately, those kind of jobs are going to naturally attract people who don't necessarily have empathy, that are in it for the power and the glory and the money.
Surgeons particularly.
In my
No?
experience so far, anyway, yeah.
Well, but to brag more, one of my nieces is a uh, brain surgeon, and the other one is an orthopedic surgeon. And my nephew, thank you very much, is a pediatric ear, nose, and throat surgeon who reconstructs injured children's faces, and they all have deep empathy. So, nah, 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 nah.
Well, but like you said, it's on a spectrum, right? So you're going to have those high level empaths that are drawn to that profession to help, exactly like you're talking about. But you're also going to have the ones that just love the power and the glory.
Yeah, yeah. So, how do you work with those hardcore cases? Do you have to do? Is it the same toolkit for you, or do you have to do a little bit more ego massaging, or what do you do?
It's actually a completely different set of skills because you're working
Tell
with
me.
a completely different set of people. So when you're dealing with adult learning, number one, there has to be an awareness that there's a gap in the knowledge. So usually by the time I'm brought in to work with those kind of people, they've been so horrendous. They've done so many bad things to their staff or to other people. They're right on the edge of being dismissed one way or the other.
Yeah.
So they have a reason to listen to me before I come in,
Yeah.
even if they don't have an awareness.
Yeah.
Because the second step is they have to have a desire to learn. And knowing they're about to get booted out usually gives people a pretty good desire.
Sounds like marriage therapy. Listen, mister, you're out of here and I'm taking half your stuff if we don't go see there. But by then it's too late.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times, even with these people too, they've already done so much damage. It is what it is.
And it squeaks from I should have put my Skype on Do Not Disturb. You see, Dr. Winemiller, Melissa, I told you that this would be a different kind of discussion. We are at the half-hour mark. So we are going to have to wrap this. I want you back because you're really, really cool. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. My audience, I know, is going to want to stay in touch and continue the conversation with you. How do they do it? And we'll put it in the show notes too, but tell us, doctor.
That would be fantastic. So the best place to find me is at my website, and that's EQ VIA Empathy, because it's a lot shorter than saying EQ through the use of empathy. We don't need any more long website names.
Yes.
So EQ via empathy. And there's the links to my LinkedIn. There's Instagram. People that sign up for my newsletter, I send out a video about the top 5 traits that leaders need right now. And I do have a book coming out at the end of the month.
Can you tell us the name, or is it?
It's called The Empathic Leader: How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation.
Say that title again.
The Empathic Leader: How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation.
I love it. I wish you a hell of a. When is it coming out?
End of the month.
That's soon?
Yeah.
All right. Do me a favor. When we go off there, I want a copy autographed. So I'm going to give you my address. I'm not giving you my address because I know you ladies will harass me with all sorts of flowers and things. So it's not. Dr. Melissa Winemiller, thank you for gracing me with this beautiful conversation. She's been an amazing guest, has she not? And stay with me after we've gone off the air. I want to chat with you a bit. Once again, a fantastic guest, an amazing, amazing episode of The Influencer's Edge. Thank you all for making my dream of communication and contribution and connection so possible each and every time I do one of these episodes, and for helping us get to the top 10% globally ranked. How the hell we did that, I don't effing know. And we'll see you next time on The Influencer's Edge. Bye now.
The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform and any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Thank you for tuning in to The Influencer's Edge, where you get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques so you can leapfrog over the pack in sales, influence, and persuasion. Remember to visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com to enjoy even more great episodes like this one. We look forward to seeing you again on The Influencer's Edge Show.